mandate of the committee, that is to pursue assurances, undertakings, and promises by ministers from time to time and report the same to plenary. We decided as a committee to invite the Minister of Power to brief us and for members to ask few questions about a question posed by a colleague of ours, Honorable Dumsor, on the 5th of June. Found out from the Minister when the load shedding in the country will end. The Minister gave an answer. So today we are here just to interrogate the Minister to find out whether the promise he gave has been fulfilled or will be fulfilled. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, you're welcome. We'll quickly do our introduction of members of the committee, and then we can call the Minister to take the oath. My name is Emmanuel Ventura, Member of Parliament for Old West Constituency and the Chairman of the committee.
My name is Kwabena Donkor, MP Kosimiti and Iraqi member.
My name is Wayne Commander Anama retired, MP for John Wayne, Vice Chairman of the committee.
I'm Evelyn Brefo Boateng, clerk to the committee.
Moses Enim, MP for Trouble. Jumosan Hofo, MP for Senate West.
Robert Amwa, MP for Agency.
Young Fukuwadi, MP for Marseille.
Thank you, honorable colleagues. I will ask the ranking member to give us a short remarks, and then I'll read a letter from the Minister of Power.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I believe that, Mr. Minister, you know why we are here. Of course, you've not taken the oath yet, but we are here because of the sector that you preside on. You have been working diligently, but this is the time to know what has happened in your ministry so far, what you've been working on, where we've reached, and also a little bit of the future for us to know whether we are living up to the promises that you made. You are a member of Parliament, so I did not talk too much. You know the standing orders, you know the rules of the House. So I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranking. We'll now ask the clerk to take their oath, and then we can proceed. I, Dr. Kwabena Donkor,
Solemnly affirm that
the
evidence I shall give before this committee touching the matter in issue shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Kwabena Donkor, Minister of Power. Honorable, we just received a letter from your ministry signed by your good self, acknowledging receipt of our letter dated 14th of December, among other things that we invited you. In this letter that I'm holding now, you mentioned that you will not be able to attend today's meeting, therefore we should be rescheduled. And all of a sudden we've seen you here again. So we're wondering whether we should reschedule it or we can go ahead. Or whether this letter was signed by your good self or somebody else.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. The letter was signed by my good self. As we speak, there is emergency critical meeting at Abuazi taking place. The assumption was that Parliament was going to rise yesterday, and I was going to drive in the night to join that meeting. But with the circumstances that we find ourselves in, that meeting, I've had to shift that meeting to later this afternoon, by which time I will have finished the parliamentary business and then drive to Abuazi. It was in the light of the emergency at Abuazi and with Parliament rising last night that I have pleaded with this committee to reschedule the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, does that mean that you are prepared to take questions from us or we should reschedule?
Honorable Chairman, once I am here in Parliament, I will take the questions, even though, as you see, I came here alone because my technical team and supporting team are unaware of this development. We left here very late last night. I couldn't get the opportunity of communicating with them this morning. So I am here to take the questions.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Once again, on behalf of the committee, we want to congratulate and thank you for attending upon the committee. Colleagues, this to all of us, even though he came alone, he's written to us officially that he will not be able to attend upon the meeting today because he has an emergency meeting at Akwari. But he has also decided that since the Parliament could not rise yesterday and you're rising today, since he's in Parliament, he wants us to have a conversation. Should we go ahead or this to all of us? If you agree, I will go ahead then we'll go ahead. This to members.
I think he said he's ready, so.
Just as Mr. Chairman, I hope you wouldn't, there wouldn't be any situation where you have to refer the matter to this technical team. And if the technical team are not here and is ready to take all the questions, we want him to take all the questions.
Thank you very much, honorable colleagues. I think this is one of the ministers, out of all ministers, that I've seen doing very well, and I believe that the questions that we have for him to be able to answer to the understanding and full appreciation of all Ghanaians. Once again, I want to thank GTV and the rest of the media houses who are here to cover this in life. Minister, on the 5th of June, 2015, on the other paper, we have one of our colleagues ask an audience question, Honorable Frank Anodonkoy, Isam Edwajiri, who asked to ask the Minister for Power what concrete steps the ministry has taken to put an end to the current power crisis, including quote, Dumsor, and what timeline can we anticipate? And Mr. Minister, in your answer to Honorable Anodonkoy's question, you mentioned in paragraph 932 when he pushed hard that you mentioned that I want to read to the benefit of all of us. Mr. Speaker, as the Honorable Minister with responsibility for power, I've only given one timeline, and that is load shedding would end by the end of this year, and I will deliver here. We are here
I made a promise that load shedding will end by the end of this year. Fortunately for us, we're still not at the end of the year. But Mr. Chairman, in terms of all mechanical things, you will plan, you will put in place measures to ensure delivery. But normally in project management, you will have some allowance to make room for slippage. And add or take away 2 weeks. Technically, by the end of the year, load shedding should be over. But the caveat is that bearing any unforeseen circumstances. For example, Mr. Chairman, if the FPSO Kwabena Donkor, which supplies gas to the Atuabu gas processing plant, should it trip, it will mean we will lose about 630 megawatts of power in the Abuazi corridor. And it's had a number of trips in the last 6 months or so. The good thing is that whenever it trips, it's never taken up to a week to bring it back to production. And that is why I'm talking about a possible slippage when we were there for about 2 weeks. If it slips, then we have a challenge. If anything untoward happens to, let's say, Southern Assembly plant, and a few unplanned maintenance stoppages have happened, that will also take about a week or so to repair. Bearing any of those, we are on track.
Thank you very much. So all things being equal, at the end of this year, that is 7 days from today, the load shedding will end. All things being equal.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, all things being equal, but the only caveat I would throw in is that the end of the year can move up to about 2 weeks into the new year. In the context, in the broader understanding of issues, a 2-week slippage will still be the end of the year.
Thank you. Since Parliament is sitting, I will ask colleagues to ask questions, and he has also mentioned that we'll be going to Takrani. So please, I'll ask colleagues to ask questions, and the questions should be direct to the part load sharing as a questioner put it, so that we can end the last over to the plenary. So I've seen the hand of, okay, I'll start with my vice chairman, and then I'll take Frida, and then you have Paul, and then Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Mr. This morning, this Kwabena, I want to hear from the horse's own mouth. In your answer to the question for Honorable Another Friend, one of the short-term measures you mentioned was the restoration of all the existing plants that have been shut. Can you tell this committee and the people of Ghana so far how many of these, if any, have been restored? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The TICO plant in Takrani was not fully functional at the time because of the expansion that was being undertaken to add steam units to the plant. As we speak, that has been completed. The steam unit is working. It's adding 120 megawatts to its installed capacity, and TICO is absolutely running as we speak. There was also some work on TACO, also in Takrady at the time. That work is almost complete. Indeed, by the end of this week to early next week, TACO will also be fully operational, coming up with about 330 megawatts, and therefore adding at least another 110 to our available capacity. As we speak today, 2 units of TAPCO are producing about 205 megawatts. The third unit, which is a steam unit that has been decommissioned, they are almost completing whatever outstanding works. And my assurance is that by Friday, but with these mechanical things, when they tell you Friday, you have to make allowance for a few more days. And that is why I say up to next week, at the maximum. That will also be on stream, adding to available capacity. There is also one of our smaller plants in Tema that is also being worked on by VRA. They are the completion stage of that. And that is why I say some of our plants which were, existing plants which were, had issues, would have been fully on stream.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have 2 quick questions. The first one is on the Akosombo Dam. I want to find out from the Minister the current situation at Akosombo. This is the quantum of power being generated at the moment. And secondly, back to the question asked by Honorable Another. As part of the short-term measures that the Minister gave, he also mentioned that completion of the following projects: 2 20 megawatts pump thermal power projects. We talked about the Tigo expansion projects. We talked about Asogli. And we talked about the 250 megawatts Ameri energy power projects. Can the Minister elaborate a little more on the Ameri power projects, considering the current Buhara on Ameri? Thank you. And also, if you can tell us whether the following short-term measures that we gave, be able to complete the projects, the pump thermal power you talked about, the Tigo, the Asogli phase projects, and of course, the 2 to 5 megawatts power should be bridging with and all that. Because he gave a fast track measures, and he gave us a short-term measure, so we can elaborate on that in the power situation as well.
Yeah, Honorable Minister, before you answer, I think your question is too loaded. You as you are asking, don't lose the question for the Minister.
The Minister gave a short-term and fast-track measures, and I want to find out about the short-term measures.
I thought you asked the first one before the second. So you loaded it.
Thank you, Mr.
Are you ready to answer our things?
Mr. Chairman, as we speak, as at 11:15 this morning, Akosombo was generating 481.27 megawatts. I monitor all our plants on my app as at 11:15. Out of an installed capacity of 1,020 megawatts. Akosombo has an installed capacity of 1,020 megawatts, and as at 11:15 this morning, it was doing 481.27 megawatts. And Mr. Chairman, this brings me to a very critical development in our generation mix that as a country, that the Ghanaian state must face. Irrespective of whichever government is in power, irrespective of who is governing this country, there is a dynamic with serious implications on power generation. That is the diminishing role of hydro in our generation mix. Demand for power is increasing by about 12% per annum. Akosombo, with an installed capacity of 1,020 megawatts, is no longer able to sustain the generation base of the country, Akosombo have provided us with what we call base load reliably over the years. Going forward, today, Akosombo's role in the generation mix is less than 35%. Why this is important, Mr. Chairman, is that Akosombo, which we call legacy hydro, generates at less than 2 cents per kilowatt hour. Our thermal plants are averaging about 14 cents per kilowatt hour. So as the role of Akosombo in the generation mix reduces, the average cost of generation goes up. And therefore, the marginal cost of any addition is extremely expensive. So we no longer have the luxury of cheap power, which had ridden on the back of Akosombo. Going forward, and it is important, Mr. Chairman, to also acknowledge that even though Bui is hydro, Bui comes at over 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And therefore, Bui is no substitute for Akosombo. Going forward, we must also acknowledge that we have exhausted all our major hydro potentials. Any other hydro plants we'll be developing will be what we call small and mini dams. And the cost per megawatt will be higher than Bui. So as a nation, we are confronted with the changing generation mix. The cheapest generation mix going forward will no longer be available, or will no longer be available in the quantum that allows the tariff to be diluted on the back of Akosombo. As a nation, we must confront this new reality. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, on the Akosombo issue. May I then take the second part of the question? We talked about Kuntema plant. It was one of the plants that was upcoming and for which I mentioned to the August House. Yes, as we speak, commissioning of 1 unit of Kuntema plant, which is 110 megawatts, is ongoing. At this very moment, the chief executives of VRA, GRICO, they are all at home because commissioning on gas is taking place on 1 unit. We also expect that CONE should be adding power to the national grid by the 28th of this month, in a few days' time after the commissioning. 1 unit of it, CONE is a 220 megawatt plant in a simple cycle stage. We also expect that latest by the end of January, the second unit will also be on stream. Sono Nasogle expansion. I spoke to the chairman of Sono Nasogle yesterday, and they think the first phase should be available on January 15th. And again, the assurance we had received earlier was that by the end of the year, but there's a 2-week or so slippage, and that was part of the reason I was saying that there's a possibility of some marginal slippage in terms of the calendar dates. Ameri, we also expect that Ameri is a 250 megawatt plant. We expect that the first 100 megawatts, Ameri is modular in that the plant comes in modules of 25 megawatts each. There are 10 of them. We expect that the first 100 megawatts should be available by the end of the year, and should there be any slippage, the slippage should not go beyond 1 week. It is for this reason that the critical review meeting is taking place in Takwari, for which, as the minister responsible, I will be present. Mr. Chairman, it is also important to acknowledge, particularly as my honorable colleague said, considering the brouhaha over Ameri, that Ameri is the cheapest plant we have in the country for all the thermal plants. The approved tariff by PURC is 11.459 cents over the 20-year period. that is cheaper than all other thermal plants in the country. It is important to put this on record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honorable Yakubu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have two sharp questions for the Minister. I want the Minister to tell us the current generation capacity of the country, or current generation capacity, the daily demand, and the peak demand. And yesterday I read in the newspaper that the power barge has added some 225 megawatts to the national grid, and we still have 230 megawatt deficit. Can the Minister confirm that this is the situation, and that if this is the situation, just opposing this over the assurance that he gave this country that end of this year, that's right. Those ones, Honorable Minister is concerned. I will not subscribe to that because he knew that in power. Yes, those incidences do occur. But we went ahead and did that. I want him to confirm that this is our situation. And by that time, these issues, the deficit will be covered so that plus or minus 2 weeks, this country will not run into the new lexicon of the world encyclopedia. Dumsor will not affect this country. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we are talking about load sharing. He has explained. Somebody called me, tweeted me, and said I should ask the minister the difference between load sharing and Dumsor. But I will come to the minister. Maybe you answer this and then later on mine.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. Factually, the second question from the honorable member is wrong. The deficit is not 230 megawatts, and Cal Power did not add 225 megawatts to the grid, factually. The 225 is the upper limit of the contractual value. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I will let the House know what the state is today. Mr. Chairman, as at 11:25 today, Cal Power is adding 196.83 megawatts. As a fact. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, what we do in power management is that there is a contracted capacity, and there is what we call a guaranteed capacity. The two are not always one. In fact, they have never been one and the same. You either guarantee, the supply will guarantee you 90% or 92% availability. So that even if the capacity is 225, what you can hold on to is the guaranteed capacity. Occasionally, for example, using the same machines, depending on ambient temperature, generation will be higher than the minimum. By this evening, all things being equal, if you looked at the same thing again, you could be getting 215 for Cal Power. And that is why we have a guaranteed capacity and an installed capacity. In terms of load shedding, for example, for today, and honorable members, it is important to note that these are projections. Every load shedding is a projection. That comes up is a projection. The actual can only be known after the event. And for today, we have never in recent times done a load shedding of 230 megawatts. For today, the off-peak load shedding for ECG, today, 23rd of December, is 300 megawatts. That is for ECG. Then there's the load shedding for NETCO. And then there's also a load shedding for industry. So that if somebody says, it is possible that yesterday the load shedding for ECG could have been 230 megawatts, but that is only for ECG. And ECG covers only 46% of the geographical mass of Ghana. NETCO is the bigger generator in terms of geographical coverage, but in terms of actual uptake of energy, NETCO, thermal alone takes more power than 64% of the rest of the country. And that is why it is critical that people understand these issues and therefore, if the load shedding seems to be intensified in the southern part of the country, it is because the southern part of the country consumes far more power than the rest of the country. And therefore, if we are shedding load, we would usually give a percentage. And that percentage would therefore make it heavier. Thermal alone, on the average, takes about 400 megawatts. The whole of the NETCO area, and NETCO captures at least 7 geographical regions in Ghana. The northern end of Western region, the northern part of Volta region, the northernmost part of Ashanti region, Brong-Ahafo, northern region, Upper West, Upper East. And therefore, when people say rural electrification is probably a major contribution to load shedding, it is factually incorrect. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We recognize the presence of a few of our colleagues who were not here when we did the introduction. I see the presence of our Honorable Minister for Rosenhaus, Honorable Minister Sini, who is here, and their colleagues, Honorable Julius Gomez, who has joined us, Honorable Dr. Chum, Cassie, and the rest, Arafat. You're all welcome. Okay, David, Honorable David. Well, I was going to ask Nelson to ask his question, but Ranking has a question, a follow-up question on the generation mix. Before Ranking asks his question, I believe that the minister is using his computer to tell us about the power today as it stands. I don't know whether the app is available in the market for Ghanaians, especially those who are interested to own it, so that we can follow up with the generation and distribution. If it's available, then we can encourage Ghanaians to get it and follow the various distribution either from NETCO or from ECG. But if it's not available and it's limited to the ministry, to let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The app is an operational app for power operations. And the good thing is that it was developed by a young Ghanaian engineer who works with Gridco. and it is a very restricted application, restricted to very few officials in GRICO, restricted to very few officials at VRA, ECG, and to myself and my deputy.
So if we request for you to tender that in evidence, as we usually do, with this electronic and since it's online, we will not be able to. Can you print it out for us? Because we need an evidence of what you said to back our report. Just as you mentioned, the power that is being produced at 11:45 today. We will need all this to add to our secretary. Okay, Ranking, can you?
Thank you very much. Minister, before I go on, I want to remind you that you are under oath. Thank you. When we were discussing the power mix, you said that Ameri is the cheapest, which is a decision that has been taken by an official to ensure that the cost of production comes down. Would you say that the decision to bring in the car power, was the best decision, and that it is cheaper than gas?
Are you prepared to answer?
I will, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I didn't say Ameri is the cheapest in the power mix. I said of the thermal plant. I want that to go on record. Ameri has the lowest tariff. And Mr. Chairman, these tariffs are not fixed by the ministry. They are fixed by the independent economic regulator of the power sector. We have two regulators, and that is why I am emphasizing economic regulator. We have a technical regulator and an economic regulator. In short, these tariffs are approved by PURC.
Yeah, my question is the car power. The car power adds on to the power mix.
Yes.
It is a batch.
Yes.
Which traveled from Turkey to this country, so it can come by sea. We have a problem in this country that the gas in Atrapo cannot come to Tema. So if you are bringing a batch, looking at the power mix, it could have been situated in the western region where our gas could be used. I'm asking that the decision to bring in car power, is it a decision that will reduce the power mix in terms of what the fuel that it uses vis-a-vis the fuel that is gas? Do you think it's a good decision?
To the extent that the question about load shedding will end, you can ask that, you can answer that question.
Mr. Chairman, with your
the mic. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, let me pull this information out. That as we speak today, we do not have enough indigenous gas even for the generating assets located in the Western Corridor. And therefore, adding another generating asset to those already in the Western Corridor will not enable that asset to utilize indigenous gas. It is important we recognize that as of today, we don't have enough indigenous gas. That is one. Two, assuming we even had enough indigenous gas, one of the critical components of power management or energy management is the diversity of fuel sources. As I told this honorable committee a few minutes ago that when the FPSO trips, we immediately lose 630 megawatts of generation. And therefore, it is not prudent in energy management to have only one fuel source. It puts the country at risk should anything happen to it. But under the car power contract, 2 225s were contracted. One of them is supposed to be anchored in Takoradi Harbor. We still have challenges even securing berths in Takoradi Harbor. The site that was originally looked at was the naval site. And when the naval engineers and naval architects looked at it, if the barge is located there, finding space for our warships to maneuver will be compromised. And therefore that site became unavailable. A second site by Gakoha is being looked at. But apart from the challenges of the site, the evacuation infrastructure from the port, that is the transmission, is fully congested. And if we are to locate any generating asset there, it will mean major revamp of evacuation infrastructure, which will take time and which will take money. So we are considering replacing the 2225s, considering at this stage, with a 450, which will help us meet our contractual obligation and yet sidestep the issue of major cost in getting a location in the Takoradi Harbor.
Minister, I agree with you to say that we shouldn't concentrate on one fuel, and that we should get other machines that take other fuel. Mr. Minister, this car power equipment, does it use gas in addition to what the capacity? Can it use gas if we get gas? Because we have about 10-year or so contract. When we get back gas in abundance, can we use gas?
Mr. Chairman, the barge is dual fuel. It can be fueled by HFO, heavy fuel oil, and can also be fueled by natural gas. So when gas, if you look at the tariff approved by PURC for the barge, there are two tariffs. One is when it's using HFO, and two, when gas becomes available, there is also a different tariff. Because ordinarily, gas is far more efficient for the plants than HFO. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll take another 3 questions in addition to Nelson. Nelson will come on. After Nelson, Moses, Chu, and then Chumesi, and then Honorable Silva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Minister, the work Dumsor have taken the state in Ghana, in your own estimation, what time do you think this name Dumsor will change to a high career?
I overrule this particular question because I mentioned that the minister will be answering question relating to load shedding and Dumsor, which he will be answering. So if you have another question, you can ask.
Is the Dumsor and the high? That's what I want to ask. I want you to change the name from Dumsor to high, so that I can
Okay. Honorable Minister, are you prepared to answer the Dumsor and the higher question? But can you explain, in Parliament, can you, explain the Dumsor so that we capture it?
I think there's the use of Dumsor, which is all over Ghana. And I've also introduced high. The high, and then when are we going to have full capacity?
been at pains at various places to make a critical distinction that the new lexicon Dumsor does not reflect. Mr. Chairman, load shedding arises out of generation deficits. In ordinary language, we say power rationing because we don't have enough. That is what I promised on the floor of the House to work towards is cessation. But Mr. Chairman, you can have all the generation and also have outages in particular areas. Mr. Chairman, 4 weeks ago, in the Tema community alone, 5 of our transformers were vandalized because people want to steal copper from our transformers. When that happens, irrespective of the generation available, that particular locality will not have power until ECG either repairs the transformers or replaces them, or it is NETCO. NETCO either replaces the transformers or repairs them. Though that is the situation we term localized outage. And therefore, I am very careful of the overgeneralization. Because if you don't make that distinction, I am not accountable for the thievery and the vandalism of some Ghanaians. And that is why it is important I make that distinction. Underground cables have also been stolen. So those are acts arising out of criminality. There are also occasions with some of our modern transformers. When transformers are overloaded, they will cut. And the transformer serves a particular locality. Mr. Chairman, it is not for nothing that in other jurisdictions, you will need a building permit to put up a structure. At the very least, it gives the utility company some information as to areas coming up, and they'll be able to calculate the need for additional transmission or distribution infrastructure. Unfortunately, in our jurisdiction, this is prominent by its non-compliance. And therefore, the utilities do not have the adequate or the requisite information to plan 2-3 years ahead. Communities spring up literally overnight, adding to the load of the area, and in no time, the installed transformer's capacity is exceeded. When that happens, in the old days, some of the transformers blow up. These days, with the new ones we are introducing, when that happens, they will cut. And that area will be thrown into darkness until something is done. And that is why I am at pains to make the distinction, especially when we are dealing with this August House. If you don't make that distinction, people will mix the two up. So, Mr. Chairman, that is why I'm at pains to do that.
Follow-up question. No, you can have a follow-up question when it's your turn. Since we don't have enough time, we have to go back to we'll ask Moses, but Mr. Minister, it's not only in other jurisdictions that you need permit to put up a building. Even Ghana here, you need permit to put up a building. But I think over and over, we have an issue of getting people connecting to the transformer because somebody has asked that somebody should do it. I think we should be able to do something. We are getting a signal that we have to go to the chamber to start to work in the chamber. So we have few minutes to go. Moses, Tumesi, and Honorable Della. From there, we can call it a week.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I thought that my Honorable Minister might have, as he mentioned, project management might have considered these shortcomings in terms of mechanical defects and the timing of mechanical defects. So, given the only timeline that he gave, in the project initiation, you consider all these issues. before you give a timeline. So for now, I think he's changing the goalpost, but well, we'll take his word for it. And then, Chairman, the cheaper aspect of America, how is we, the end users, going to benefit from it because we see tariffs going up. But Mr. Chairman, the point is this. Mr. Chairman, the point is this. As part of the answers given by the minister to Honorable Anodon's question, some reasons attributable to the current power supply. The point number 4, with your permission, I read: mandatory inspection and routine maintenance and fuel supply challenges. My concern is that routine maintenance and inspection. I want to find out from the minister how these problems have been, how has he solved this problem? Because maintenance and routine inspection is key. He also outlined another issue. This is the last one. This is the last one because they are on our neck and they are getting us offline. Maybe this is the last one because it's giving a deadline of a second quarter 2016 on the regular LNG project. I wanted to find out whether that has been solved.
Mr. Chairman, when in power management, you need what we call redundancy, which in plain English will be a reserve margin. When you have a deficit, you don't even have the reserve margin. And therefore, part of our program is not just to bridge the gap, but it's also to build up a reserve margin. When you have a reserve margin, then it doesn't matter which plant is done for maintenance, whether planned or unplanned, because then the reserve margin kicks in. But we are building capacity towards bridging the gap and also creating a reserve margin for the future. Once we have the reserve margin that the consumer will not know. Let me take the tariff. The tariff is what either ECG, NETCO, or whoever is supplying can charge consumers. So when consumers have a lower tariff, such as in the Ameri project, of course it enables the distribution company break even and help create a situation where power supply will be sustainable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Power, for attending up on this committee. Colleagues, we just had a signal to get back to the chamber. We will not come back again for the continuation. The minister has to go to Takrady for other official assignment. But we won't have a meeting immediately after adjournment, official adjournment